Greetings, friends. Freshly turned 42, my name is Peter, and welcome back to Retro Unscripted. This is episode 26, and as always, I thank you very much for taking the time to watch, subscribe, and react to my videos and my work. I really appreciate it. Today's episode, I want to dedicate to Shane, otherwise known as Rerez, who is active on RetrowareTV.com, and he also has his own YouTube channel. And he provided me with the inspiration for today's episode. So, Shane, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. Had to be there. Sounds like a cop-out, doesn't it? But it's not, really. Take Tomcat Alley, for existence. Tomcat Alley, if you hadn't played it back when it was first released or within the first year or so, if you were to play it now, you wouldn't understand why the game was special. As a matter of fact, if you're like Shane and played Tomcat Alley fairly recently without having any of that history, you'd probably fail to understand what the hell you were doing or what you were playing. It's very difficult to comprehend. After all, while the full motion video is cool, the controls are lacking. What's this waypoint business about? Why are these people doing these random things? It's complicated. And then, of course, when you get into combat and you're trying to position your aiming reticle over an aircraft, it's split-second timing. If you press the button too late and launch the missile, you miss, and it becomes frustrating. There are games like this and other full motion video games that are a lot tighter, a lot sharper, and just play a lot better. So of course it's easy to single out Tomcat Alley or to pick it as an article topic and talk about how rough a game it is. Now, to Shane's credit, his series, which is called Positives, one of the many series that Shane has been working on, tries to take a game like Tomcat Alley or other bad games and try and find the positives or the good things about them. And that's one of the reasons that I like Shane so much, is because that series idea to me is such a cool idea. Because not all bad games are really that bad. Most bad games, not all, but most bad games, you're going to be able to find a few things to come away with and say, you know, it really wasn't that bad because A, B, C. But Tomcat Alley is one of those games that I call a had-to-be-there game. And the reason that I call it that is because when I played this game brand new back in the early 90s for my Sega CD, this game blew me away. And you have to think about why. For starters, this is a movie. This is a movie that's playing on my video game console in 1993 or 1994. I forget the year off the top of my head. But this was something that was new. Back then, we were playing games on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo, and sometimes the graphics would be digitized, like a Mortal Kombat, or sometimes the games would have polygon graphics, like Star Fox, for example, or Virtua Racing. But this was something that we'd only seen in arcades prior. Arcade games such as Dragon's Lair, Space Ace, Us vs. Them, Time Traveler, Cobra Command. These were games that introduced movies into our video game experiences, even if they were just playing in the background while sprites were kind of superimposed across the front of the screen, kind of like you see when you're picking waypoints or when you're trying to target craft in Tomcat Alley. This was novel. This was new. And dare I say it, back in the 80s especially, this was revolutionary. This was something that we hadn't seen. So back then it was mind-blowing. Now we look at a game like a Dragon's Lair or a Space Ace or a Tomcat Alley or a Time Gal or a Road Avenger, and we wonder what these people were thinking. Why were these games so great? I don't get it. I don't understand. These aren't games, they're interactive movies. There's no action, there's no gameplay. I get it. I understand that. If you compare this with a game like Ace Combat, for example, it's night and day. The differences are completely off the chart. So, of course, Tomcat Alley isn't going to appeal to a flight sim fan. You're going to play Ace Combat. You're going to play Hawks. You're going to play even Microsoft Flight Simulator over something like this. But back then, you had to be there. Back then, the game was significant. Dragon's Lair was significant back then, back in 1983, because we weren't used to or hadn't seen anything like it. We weren't used to seeing games that were actually fully animated cartoons like Dragon's Lair was. Or something like Firefox from Atari from 1984 that was all full motion video with flight sequences that were just mind-blowing at the time. Firefox is little more than a superimposed shooter over movie sequences. So, of course, comparatively, if you were to play it now, you wouldn't understand why it was so cool in arcades back then. But back then, seeing Firefox in an arcade and knowing that you had 50 cents in your pocket or a couple of tokens in your pocket, you wanted to play it because it was something that you weren't used to seeing. It was revolutionary. It really, really was. You're comparing something with movie graphics or with full motion video to something that's all sprites and hand-drawn. These days, we prefer the hand-drawn over the full motion video because there's more effort. It feels nostalgic. It feels original. It feels organic. Whereas back then, in the 80s and the early 90s, stuff like this was what we wanted to see. We wanted more of this full motion video stuff. We wanted to feel that we were interacting with something that was very real, that was like a movie, like a cartoon, which is why we saw so many of these games on the Sega CD. Your Tomcat Alley, your Time Gal, your Road Avenger, your Cobra Command, your Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, your Revenge of the Ninja. Revenge of the Ninja is one of the games I'm still trying to find, by the way. All of these games back then we wanted to see because they really took advantage of full motion video and multimedia, and it was something for video game consoles that was a new thing for us to experience, and that's why it was important. So while I understand Shane's frustration with Tomcat Alley, and I understand why it may have been difficult for Shane to find positives, but he did. Yes, he did. It may be difficult to find positives for a game like Tomcat Alley. If you played it back then, I think you would have had a better handle, maybe like I did, of why the game was significant, why Dragon's Lair was significant, and why someone like me who remembers those games at the time still really enjoys playing them, even if it's not back in the day anymore. As always, I thank you very much for watching Retro Unscripted. I did get some really cool stuff for my birthday, and I'm going to do a video log for May that's going to show off the games that I got, but that's a few days down the road. For now, I want to thank you for watching Retro Unscripted. I appreciate all of the comments and all of the subscriptions. And I will see you, and you, and you, on the next episode of Retro Unscripted, minus the flight scenes. Until then, take care, everybody.